let's talk about the PLS, preschool language scale. There are a lot of people that have a love-hate relationship with this particular test, and you will see probably pretty quickly why. There are a lot of pieces to this, and there is a lot of reading that needs to be done and a lot of prep work. So I could not emphasize enough the need to do pre-reading of everything that's going to be required and double checking to make sure that you have every toy that you are going to need. There are a lot of toys that are needed for this particular test. So always, always, always before you administer this test, just make sure that you have every toy that you're going to need, and even think ahead, because if your kid gives you way more than what you're expecting, you want to make sure that you're prepared to go beyond even what you think that you're going to need. So making sure you have the bear, you have those cubes, you have the squeaky toy, and double checking every single time that you have all the toys that you're going to need. So beyond the toys, the other pieces are your record form, as is with every test. You do have the option of doing a home questionnaire. So these are just a pad of a bunch of the same. You just rip this off and you can send that home before or after to get some information from home. Not necessary, but it is a nice added piece. You have a picture manual for part of your test. You're going to show the child some pictures and ask them some questions to make sure you have your picture manual. And then you have this as well. So this is going to be very important because this has your directions. It also has everything as far as your scoring and how to transfer all those scores. And as is with every test, your very important manual to make sure that you're following all the directions correctly. Okay, let's jump right in. So one of the things that you will notice when you look at the record form that there are two different sections. There is an auditory comprehension and there is an expressive communication section for each of the ages. So you will see on page 6 of the manual that it lets you know that you can administer either the auditory or the expressive scale first. And also you are allowed to do some of them out of order. So you don't necessarily have to go in a perfect sequence if the child, for example, may find it easier to maintain focus. So here it says, some children may find it easier to maintain focus on items presented using the manipulatives and then move to the items with the picture manual. So remember those pictures. So just keep that in mind that you do have a little bit of freedom there. And if you need some more detailed descriptions on how that works, just look here on page 6. Alrighty, so let's talk about basal and ceiling. So the rule can be found on page 11 of your manual, so you can hop in there, but it is a little bit different from other basals and ceilings, so please pay attention to this. For your basal, for the PLS, you want to make sure that the child is getting, so it tells you right here for the auditory and the expressive, that they have to get 3 consecutive in a row. However, unlike other tests that we have where you just pop back to the next one above, that's not how the PLS works. So let's say you're working with a kid who is 3-6 or between 3-6, 3-11. You administer this first one, they don't get this one, or they don't get one of these two, the next one's on the list. You do not go to the one above, you go to the age section. So you start all the way at the very top. So you would go all the way back to 3035 and then work your way forward to be able to get that basal for that particular child. So again, you'll start on number 32. If they get it wrong, you do not go to 31. If they get 32 wrong, you go all the way up to 27 through 29. So making sure that you're doing the full section ahead and not just the one before. One of the things that is another one of those love-hate relationships with the PLS is that you will see that the ceiling for this particular test, and to get your ceiling, you just have to flip through to page 15. Oh, yep, page 15. And you will see that they have to get 6 consecutive items wrong before you can ceiling this kid out. So you will find, as most speech language pathologists do find, is that you're going to have that little precocious kiddo who is going to get 5 wrong, and then they're going to get one right. and then they're going to get 5 wrong, and then they're going to get 1 right. So that does happen a lot. Just stick with it. But just so you know, for the basal, you'll pop back to the full age section, and ceiling is 6 consecutive wrong. Alrighty, so here is where the PLS can get a little confusing and why it gets a little overwhelming. With every question, you will see that there are materials that are needed. So for this question, you'll see material is the picture manual and page 59. So you would just need to go to your picture manual and then just flip to page 59, keeping in mind that like a lot of other manuals, you will get to a point where you have to turn the manual around. So see, there's nothing here. So what you need to do, you'll have it up in that easel format. So there's your easel format. You're flipping this way, right? But then the book can be turned as well, right? So you're flipping, here's this one, you're flipping, you get to that expressive, right? And you're gonna flip away from the client. And then you will see number 50. Right? So on the other side, if you turn the book around, on the same side as number 50, number 49 is there as well. Okay? So just keep in mind that these are double-sided pages and that this book gets flipped depending on the item that you're administering. And then you have an articulation screener on here as well. So that's just something else that's available to you. All right, so the book can work both directions, this way or this way, and just making sure that you're double checking. So you have the picture manual, and it's going to tell you which picture exactly you need to give to the kid. So for this one, you're going to say, again, what you say is in bold, like many of our other tests. Look at this picture, it's a pencil. What do you do with a pencil? Right? And you kind of wait for the kid to answer that, and then they're going to get, either they got it or they didn't get it, right? For the next item down, number 41, you'll see that there are no materials. Those will be your favorite questions when administering the PLS. You will love having no materials. But then when you flip, so remember staying on this side because this is the expressive language, so we're going to administer just expressive. When we're finished, then we can move to auditory. For this one, you'll see that your materials are a spoon and the box with the lid. So that's where you're going to come over here. This is your box with the lid, and your spoon is somewhere in your box. So this is why you always make sure that all of your materials are available, because you don't want to be in the middle of administering and not have something available to you. So here's your spoon, and what you're going to do is, it says you're going to place the box in front of the child, put the spoon in, under, on the box, and each time ask, where is the spoon? This is a really good example why pre-reading this is really important, but also remember that it's a lot for you to keep in mind. So it's okay for you to take breaks and read what your materials are, and for you to take the time to make sure you are administering correctly. It will feel like an eternity to you. It will be a very welcome break to the child, okay? And so that is going to be the case you'll see for every item, regardless of the age. You are going to be using certain materials, whether that is your picture manual, or whether that is no materials, which you always love, or whether that might be some crayons or the teddy bear. So Mr. Bear is a big part of this test. Mr. Bear does a lot. Mr. Bear is thirsty, Mr. Bear is hungry, he needs a nap. So there's lots of things that you're doing with Mr. Bear at various ages. So for instance here, you can see if you're administering the auditory comprehension, you'll need the teddy bear, 3 cups, box with the lid, the small pitcher, the spoon, the bowl, and 8 blocks. And you're like, oh my goodness, right? What's super important, and there are reminders here, is that you are not pointing towards things. So there's a lot of parts of the test where you'll have different items lined up in front of the child like this, and you'll say something like, give me Mr. Bear. What you want to be careful that you don't do is put your hand out and say, give me Mr. Bear. right? Because look, I just told the kid what I want them to do. And so now I'm assessing their nonverbal skills versus their auditory comprehension. So making sure that your hands are staying to your body, that you're not indicating, that you're not looking at what you want the child to do, and you're not giving them nonverbal cues of what needs to be done. That you're just giving them that auditory, that they're able to follow those directions like you need them to. So this test can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. Do not be afraid of the silence. The silence is good for the kid. It allows them to take a break. But also, as a word of warning, you are testing children. So potentially if you have a little feisty one and somebody who's really hyper, your breaks might be a time that they might try to take advantage of that and wiggle away from you. You can use all of these toys to your advantage. So if you are trying to set up for the next question, give the kid a car, give the kid your cause and effect toy, or just give them something from your box to hang on to, whether that's Mr. Bear or something else, and give them something for their little hands to do so that they are occupied so you can take the time to set up correctly for the next question. Once you have finished administering the test in its entirety, you're going to go through and you're going to count up all the ones. So how many items did that child get correct? And keeping in mind anything above the basal gets counted. So if you start on item 10, then they get automatically 1 through 9, they get those points. Those raw scores get transferred right onto the front of your record form. And then you're going to go to your manual, and starting on page 125 is where all of your appendices are going to be for transferring those scores. So always making sure that you are at the right age. So depending on the age of your child, so where do we need to start? So the kid that we tested was between the ages of 1-6 to 1-11. We want to make sure that's where we're starting. Or if the kid is a little bit older, we want to make sure that we're starting on that page. And then what you will do is your raw score is over here. So making sure that you're right here, you'll see this is expressive. And then on this side, you will see this is the auditory comprehension. So if your kid is 3.0 to 3.5, you're going to use these two pages. You find the raw score that your child got. You're going to have that standard score, your confidence intervals yet again, and your percentile ranking, all here on this one page. So that all will get transferred to here. So that standard score, confidence intervals, percentile ranking, all of that will go on the front of this protocol. Okay, and then what you will do, and you'll see the last item administered, this is really helpful so that you can just do the calculation for the raw score. You don't have to count. So let's say the last item that you administered is for this kid, let's say that it was number 49. You can also calculate the raw score this way, 49, and then subtract the number of zeros, and that will tell you the raw score. So just another way of calculating it rather than going through and counting it. I always do it both ways. I always count and then do the simple math because I think it's just a double checking. So it's really important, okay? And then you will put that raw score for auditory and put that raw score for expressive, and then find those standard scores, percentile ranks. And then you will see if you go to Appendix B, which is after all of these. So Appendix B, which is going to start on page 161, that's where you will find the total language score. So you want to make sure that you're adding up the sum of the standard scores, not the raw score. The sum of the standard scores for auditory and expressive, and that is going to give you your total language score. So that total language score goes here. So the standard score, those are going to be these two here. You add those, that's going to be your sum, and then you can add your raw scores as well, but you want to make sure when you're transferring that you're doing the total standard score, and then you're going to get an overall standard score for the language, which will go here, confidence intervals, and your percentile ranks again. So when you add those two standard scores together, if it falls between 244 and 245, regardless of the age, so this is all ages, then that would give them a standard score of 124, which would go here, confidence intervals, depending on which one you're using, 90 or 95, and then percentile rank as well. All right, we're going to look at just two very quick things. Again, keeping in mind that this is just the basic overview, so there are more pieces to this test, just foundational work. So the last two things, one is the age equivalence, and then one more thing on the front of the protocol, the record form. So if you want to convert to age equivalence, you're going to look at page 166 of that manual. And this is going to be for all of your kids, and that is calculated from the raw score. Right? So you're going to find what the raw score was for auditory comprehension and expressive comprehension. So making sure you're looking at the right column, correct? So auditory is on your left side and expressive communication is on the right side. So you'll find that raw score, whatever that might be. Remember, your raw scores are here. So that's where you're going to find those raw scores. You'll find it, and then you just go across and it's going to tell you what your age equivalence is. It's also going to give you the growth scale values as well. So those are there available for you so that you have them. That age equivalence is going to go right here on the front of the protocol, which is really great. And then the last thing that I want to show you is this score summary. So this is a really nice visual that you can use, and a lot of your tests will have this. So for your auditory comprehension, whatever that standard score is, you're going to plot it. So let's say that the kid gets a 90 as a standard score, and then whatever those confidence intervals are, so let's just say if they got a 90 and then it was between 95 and 85. So essentially what you would do is you would just put like a little dot or an X or somewhere like this is the standard score that they got. And then you can just score a little bracket like this to say that is my confidence interval. This would be considered within normal limits, the shaded purple, and then above and below. So any of your kids, so let's say maybe this is where they plotted out, but then when you look at the confidence interval, they're falling a little bit below the normal limits. That's something that you would want to talk about in your report. Alrighty, so those are the very basics. Again, the PLS can be very overwhelming because of all the toys involved. There's lots of materials going on, but just remember, you're playing with kids, you're working with kids. So take your time, look at those pictures, play with the toys, have fun with it. Try not to stress too much, but be prepared. Make sure you do your work ahead of time, that you read and you know everything. And I cannot reiterate enough, double check this box every single time you give that test. That's the worst thing, to go in, to be in the middle of the test and realize you're missing something like the squeaky toy. So just make sure that you're double checking to make sure you have all of your tests. In one of the clinics that I work in, we actually put a list up here in the top of the box of everything that should be in this box. That's a nice little trick for you to do. I highly suggest that. This one doesn't have it, but at the clinic where we work, we have that entire list here. So not a bad idea to do that.